On September 15, 2025, the world was stunned. Taiwan's president, in a live address from Taipei, announced the start of formal negotiations for peaceful unification with mainland China. The news sent shockwaves worldwide, replacing the old fear of war with deep uncertainty. For decades, the Taiwan Strait was a flashpoint. Now, the world watched as a new chapter began. This decision was years in the making, shaped by mounting pressure and complex calculations. Suddenly, questions shifted. What would unification mean for Taiwan's democracy? How would global power dynamics change? Financial markets from New York to Tokyo plunged into volatility, with investors fearing for Taiwan's vital semiconductor industry. Diplomats scrambled to assess the new reality. The Indo-Pacific balance of power was upended overnight. The United States, Taiwan's longtime security partner, faced a difficult reckoning. For the people of Taiwan, the news was personal, sparking fear, protests, and, for some, relief. Families were divided, the streets of Taipei filled with demonstrators worried about losing their freedoms. Others saw unification as a way to avoid war and bring economic stability. Taiwan is more than an island. It's a symbol of democracy, a tech powerhouse, and a key player in the US-China rivalry. Its fate is now tied to the future of the global order. The world held its breath, knowing the answers to these questions would shape the century. The stage was set for a historic transformation. To understand this moment, we must look back. The China-Taiwan divide began with the end of a brutal civil war in the 1940s. Nationalists led by Chiang Kai-shek lost to Mao Zedong's communists. In 1949, Mao declared the People's Republic of China in Beijing. Chiang and 2 million followers fled to Taiwan, bringing the Republic of China's government and hopes of return. Two governments claimed to be the true China, one in Beijing, one in Taipei. Both insisted there was only one China, but disagreed on who should rule. The Taiwan Strait became one of the world's most militarized zones. Over time, the dream of retaking the mainland faded for Taiwan. The world's stance shifted. In 1971, the UN recognized the PRC as China's government. The US switched diplomatic recognition to Beijing in 1979, isolating Taiwan. While the US continued arms sales, Taiwan's international space shrank. The division, rooted in history, was now cemented by modern geopolitics. Taiwan's fate became a global issue, not just a regional one. The seeds of today's crisis were sown decades ago. The world watched as the two Chinas drifted further apart. After 1949, China and Taiwan took radically different paths. On the mainland, Mao's Communist Party built a totalitarian state, land, factories, and lives under strict control. Political campaigns like the Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution brought chaos and suffering. China was isolated, freedom non-existent. In Taiwan, the nationalists ruled with martial law and suppressed dissent but focused on economic growth and land reform. US support helped Taiwan transform into an industrial powerhouse, one of the four Asian tigers. The real turning point came in the late 1980s when Taiwan began its peaceful transition to democracy. Martial law was lifted, opposition parties formed, and free elections held. Taiwan became a beacon of democracy in Asia, forging a unique identity. Meanwhile, China opened its economy after Mao's death, sparking an economic miracle. Hundreds of millions rose from poverty, but the Communist Party kept its grip on power. China became wealthy, but remained authoritarian. The contrast was stark, a vibrant Taiwanese democracy versus a modern one-party China. This divergence shaped identities and set the stage for today's crisis. Two societies, two systems, now facing a historic crossroads. The world wondered, could these paths ever converge? The answer would define the future of Asia. For Beijing, unifying Taiwan is more than territory. It's about legitimacy and national pride. The Communist Party sees Taiwan's separation as a historical wound. Unification is central to Xi Jinping's Chinese dream. Beijing's strategy is built on the One China principle. There is only one China, and Taiwan is part of it. Countries wanting ties with Beijing must accept this. Over decades, China used its growing power to isolate Taiwan diplomatically. Only a handful of nations still recognize Taiwan officially. Beijing also used economic incentives, encouraging Taiwanese investment and travel to the mainland. The goal made unification seem natural and inevitable. Millions of Taiwanese have worked or invested in China, deepening ties. But Beijing never renounced the use of force. The People's Liberation Army modernized, focusing on the ability to invade Taiwan. Military exercises and missile buildups serve as constant reminders of Beijing's resolve. The message is clear: peaceful means are preferred, but force is always an option. The pressure on Taiwan has never been greater. Why did Taiwan finally agree to negotiate? The answer? Mounting pressure on every front. China's military modernization made Taiwan's defense increasingly uncertain, even with US help. Daily threats and military drills created psychological exhaustion. Economic dependence on China grew. Beijing used trade restrictions and market access as leverage. Global economic headwinds and tech competition made Taiwan vulnerable. Diplomatic isolation deepened. Few countries recognized Taiwan, and it was excluded from key international bodies. Doubts about US support grew as Washington's priorities shifted. A new Taiwanese government, elected on pragmatism, argued that negotiation was the least bad option. They saw talks as a way to avoid war and secure the best possible terms. The decision was not surrender, but a calculated move to protect Taiwan's future. Military threat, economic coercion, diplomatic isolation, and political calculation all converged. The tipping point had arrived. Taiwan chose to negotiate before its position weakened further. The world braced for what would come next. The announcement triggered instant, powerful reactions. In Taiwan, society split. Mass protests erupted in Taipei, with crowds demanding to protect democracy. Many felt betrayed and fearful of Beijing's rule. Yet, some older citizens and business leaders saw unification as inevitable or even hopeful, seeking stability and economic opportunity. The island was deeply divided. Internationally, shockwaves hit Washington and allied capitals. US strategy in Asia was upended. Allies like Japan and South Korea were alarmed. The prospect of China controlling Taiwan's semiconductor industry sent global markets into turmoil. Tech stocks plunged and governments scrambled to assess supply chain risks. The world realized how interconnected and fragile the global order had become. A new, unpredictable era had begun. The stakes had never been higher. Beijing's offer, one country, two systems, the same model promised to Hong Kong. On paper, Taiwan would keep its democracy, economy, and even its own military, with high autonomy. Beijing promised more freedom than Hong Kong ever had. But Taiwan watched Hong Kong's freedoms erode under Beijing's grip. The national security law crushed dissent, silenced the press, and jailed protesters. Many in Taiwan fear Beijing's promises are hollow. The core fear, once unified, freedoms will vanish and democracy will fade. The gap between a liberal democracy and a one-party state seems unbridgeable. Can two such different systems coexist under one flag? Most Taiwanese doubt it. The promise of autonomy is shadowed by the peril of control. Unification would reshape the global order. China's military would gain a strategic edge, projecting power deep into the Pacific. US allies like Japan and South Korea would feel more vulnerable, questioning American security guarantees. Taiwan's semiconductor industry would give China immense economic leverage. The world could become dependent on China for critical technology. This new power could be used for economic coercion. The unification would be a victory for authoritarianism, a blow to democracy. It would signal that powerful states can absorb smaller democracies. The US and its allies would face a crisis of confidence. The world would be less free, with a new superpower at its center. The consequences would echo for decades. The road ahead is fraught with challenges. For Beijing, winning over Taiwan's people is the biggest hurdle. Force alone won't bring stability. Integrating a vibrant democracy into an authoritarian system is a monumental task. Any crackdown could spark unrest and undermine the one country, two systems promise. For Taiwan, the existential challenge is preserving its freedoms and identity. Society will remain divided, and many may choose to leave rather than live under communist rule. The world will watch anxiously. Missteps could still lead to conflict. The choices made now will shape not just Taiwan and China, but the global order. The future is unwritten and the risks are immense. The world stands at a crossroads, waiting to see what comes next.